Accessible instruction. It includes the curriculum materials that are chosen, the way the materials are presented to students, and the manner in which students can express their knowledge. At Atomic Learning, we recruited some help from a student and her mother to give insight into why accessible instruction is so important. After watching this video, there's an opportunity to sign the Accessible Instruction Pledge to commit to providing and/or advocating for accessible instruction in every educational role. Through November, everyone who signs the pledge will receive access to free online training on accessibility so they can start making a difference immediately. I encourage you to go to atomiclearning.com/all-students to see the video and sign the pledge. But mostly, I encourage you to share the video with every educator you know. Together, we can make a difference.
Welcome to the A.T.TIPSCAST, exploring and investigating the implementation of assistive technology in public schools. I'm your host, Chris Bouguet. This is episode number 83, recorded on November 4th, 2011. Recently, I had the pleasure of presenting at an assistive technology share fair that was held at George Mason University. The session was right after the keynote presentation, which was a nice look at how one school has implemented iPads in elementary classrooms. My session, fortunate for me, was in the very same room as the keynote. Once the keynote was over, I watched as just about everyone promptly filed out of the room to attend the workshop on the basics of Proloquo2Go, an augmentative communication app that was going to take place in a different room. Of the group of about 50 to 60 people who attended the keynote, only 4 chose to stay to learn about podcasting. This, however, was a complete blessing because the session immediately turned into a small group discussion/brainstorming session where we talked about our individual experiences with podcasts and podcasting in various educational environments. We were able to discuss some of the how-tos of podcasting as well. Of course, I recorded the entire session. It ran close to 45 minutes, which is a bit long for the typical A.T.TIPSCAST episode, so I split it up into 2 episodes. This is part 1, where we start off by talking a little bit about the ways podcasting is being used in different educational environments, and then we shift gears into a general overview of Audacity, which is just one tool that can be used to create the audio file within a podcast. Lots of excellent detailed questions are asked and then answered in this episode. Although they aren't stated as such in the episode, a few AT.TIPs snuck their way into the episode as well, and those are listed on the blog A.T.TIPSCAST.wordpress.com. And even more AT.TIPs are in part 2 of this episode, which will be coming out shortly. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the intimate conversation that is the A.T.TIPSCAST Live, the power of podcasting. Here we are recording the A.T.TIPSCAST live episode from George Mason University, the A.T. Share Fair. But so you get together at these sort of presentations, right? And even in a full room full of people, take advantage of the minds that are in the audience and make it a conversation, like Mark said. So rather than going slide by slide, unless we have to, if we want to, we can do it that way. Let's just talk. What? When you're looking at the other sessions, Proloquo and what was it?
Self-determination.
I'm
determined.
The I determined session and the tours. What made you pick the podcasting one?
I think there's a lot of diversity to podcasting, and there's a lot of approaches towards not only generating the podcasts, but to integrating them into classrooms that I like to see, the different ways of doing that and developing it and integrating it. So I didn't know if this was going to be another take on it.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we can talk about that. I mean, are you using it in that way? Have you seen classrooms using podcasts in general?
Not so much, no. I think that as as an instructional tool, at least in our county, it's probably used minimally. I would say Megan.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to Susan about that because I had a teacher who wanted to do one, and we just hit all kinds of roadblocks as to what to use, where to post it, and how to integrate it, like Jeff said, into a classroom. And we ended up using Photo Story and doing a Photo Story project.
Instead, okay.
And last year when I came to the AT Share Fair, I learned about podcasting, and I thought, oh, this is such a cool thing. Because I went to your presentation, and I was like, oh, this has got such great, I wish we could use this just for staff development in our county to reach people, because time is a resource, and people could just do staff development on their own time or when it's convenient for them, and then there would be consistency with the message, because then, because right now when we do staff development, several of us go to this school, this school, this school, this school, and you feel like you're communicating something in a consistent way, but you're not. But I'd like to put a plug in for the power of podcasting, because after last year I went home and I talked to my husband. My husband's a teacher in Loudoun County Public Schools, and he's a high school teacher.
Okay.
And I said, you should really try this podcasting thing, because it is so cool, and you work in Loudoun County and you have all of this stuff. Contact your person in your school. And he did, and he started podcasting all of his lectures last year and posting them on his site, and parents accessed it and students accessed it, and it was just a powerful thing, and he just loves it, and he still does it today. He had to change schools, and he's just gotten his podcasting thing up and running, but he's really excited about it. So I mean, it's powerful in the classroom as well, and I really need to learn how to do it so that I can implement it in my tiny little.
In what is your job responsibilities? What do you do?
I'm coordinator for special education, and we call it special instructional services at the high school.
Okay.
And so I'm really excited, but I don't feel like I know enough to be able to go and implement something and do it. So this past year we've been talking to our IT person about, podcasting and what resources we have available and how we might be able to efficiently do that.
Okay.
So it's in the developmental stages at this point.
From the university perspective, we go beyond podcasting so quickly. We do webcasting, web conferencing, we do video conferencing, that we forget the simplicity of doing just an audio podcast. So we'll see what it was like.
Look at these different perspectives. So it sounds like her husband might have your solutions, because he's doing it, right?
Yeah.
The classrooms out there that are doing it.
And there are a lot, I think, and I was asking her what her husband teaches, because he's like high-level math teacher, where there's the need for that. And I think we have probably a good number of teachers, general ed, that probably do stuff like that and post it up somewhere. But this was a teacher who wanted her students to do it. So and I think she ran into the problems of, she knows that Audacity was a tool she should use, but she had never used it before. The students had never used it before. It seemed complicated, like that kind of thing.
Gotcha. So, all right. So, let's start there on the tool, Audacity. Are you all familiar with it? Do you want to see it? Would you like to see it? Or I feel good about it.
I'm very comfortable with it, but I mean,
I haven't used it a lot. I know it. I've downloaded it.
Okay.
It's up to you guys.
You want to see it real quick?
Yes, I'd like to see it.
Okay. So, Audacity is a free piece of software that I think it's for Mac and PC, but GarageBand is what you'd find on Macs. I think that's free as well, too. I'm not a big... In Loudoun, we use PC, so Mac, GarageBand free? I can't remember. Or
it is.
It is free. So, but essentially, you get all these functions up here at the top. All you really need to know when you start recording, if you have a microphone plugged in, here's my little microphone, and I hit the red record button, and you'll see the little spiky lines here, which means that I like to think of them like the outer limits lines, that my voice is working, it's actually going in, and it's being recorded. And if I want to pause the podcast at any time, meaning not the podcast. I want to pause the audio recording at any time. I hit the pause button. And if I want to stop it, I hit the stop button. Pausing means if I unpaused it, I pick up right at the same point. Where stop would mean that I would start over again when I started again. That's all you really need. Meaning that would you agree, Jeff? What else would you say about Audacity?
Occasionally we'll go in and edit, so that's I think a pretty simple process tool too, with the highlighting tool, and then you just use the scissors tool that's there, or that button that will clip the pieces that you want to crop out of it. So say something you don't want repeated, it's easy to get back out of there.
Exactly. Go through and you go and I want to cut all that part out because I don't want to hear people meet. And when I'm doing the A.T.TIPSCAST, I have lots of flubs. So I do a lot of editing, exactly how Jeff described it, with using that tool. The other thing, I guess, would be exporting. So how do you save it? When you're all done, I guess I'll show you that at the very end when we're saving this file. But you would just go up to File and Save. When you do a save, it's saving the whole program, right? So if you wanted to keep recording, you could later on. You could pick that whole process up. If you're in the middle of editing and you don't have time to finish your editing, you hit save, it saves the whole project. You'd open that project up again and be working in there. I think it's an AUP file, how like a Word document is .doc or a PowerPoint PPT. This would be .aup, I think is what it's, right?
I can't remember the extension offhand,
but that's not the file that's not our end file that we listen to. When we listen to an MP3 file. And so that process is file export. You've got your file, you got all your editing done, you like it, you do file export as MP3. One of the confusing things about Audacity, and probably not in GarageBand, GarageBand probably works better, but I haven't played with that, is there's something called the lame encoder, which is it's an extra little step of installation in order for it to export as an MP3. But that's an easy enough process to install. And installing lame, L-A-M-E encoder, and it'll tell you how to put that into Audacity. Someday that's going to be all integrated together, but I think there's some licensing thing that we can't
do one question. So when we do web conference, like an hour's video conference could be in the gig. So how much, when we get this in an hour, how big will your file be generally?
It's hard to say because it's different depending on like the type of all the different audio in here. Like I think like the louder it is, the more gigs it takes, the quieter it is, and it takes smaller, the more special effects you have, that kind of stuff. So I haven't really found like a good, Then there's the once you have the file, there's things you can do with it, where you can add a picture to it, you can add text to it, properties that change how large that file is. Does anyone else have a good correlation for?
Or is it more like 50 meg, 100 meg?
It's typically small.
Okay.
I think, I don't know, maybe if I had to guess off the top of my head, I'd say a minute a meg.
Okay.
That's just a ballpark, but I don't know. I could look at the A.T.TIPSCAST, see how long, we could bring that up, and see how long an episode is and see how many megs it is.
Just curiosity. With video conferencing, everything is in the gigs. Like, one class becomes over a gig.
Sure, because you got the video.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's become a storage issue.
Absolutely. So one of the important things to mention about podcasting here is that once you've created this audio file, you haven't really created a podcast. All you've done is created an audio file. What makes it a podcast is the ability to have it, the RSS ability, syndicating. You're putting it up in a way that people can find it and people can subscribe to it. Mm-hmm. Right? Any comment? All right, so Susan, what other questions? Or anyone, any questions about Audacity?
Nope.
I said.
How do you add in the fancy music? The beginning and the end.
Gotcha.
That's the part, I think, because with the Movie Maker or whatever, you're used to the different tracks and stuff, and it just looks different, so I'm just
It's exactly like that, Megan. It's exactly like the different tracks like in Movie Maker, where you'll see track 1, track 2, track 3, or in Movie Maker it's the audio, the video, and then you see those different tracks. Well, here it's just all audio, and you'll see right here it says audio track, and this is the first one. If I stopped it and hit the record button again, it would start audio track number 2, and you would see this same thing that's happening here, but you would see it here. And so just like Jeff said, you would cut at a certain point, and you would have multiple tracks layered. So right now we have us speaking, but when I go back and I put the beginning, A.T.TIPSCAST music at the beginning of the episode, I'll have that as a separate track. It comes here to a certain part of the timeline, and the next one kicks in. So it's like
A layer.
Like a layer, that's a great way to put it. And you only see one layer at a time. You can have a little overlap, so as you have the music fading out and the voice coming in, there's a little bit overlap, and it's literally overlap. You'd see that, that makes.
And Megan, you can import, you can import music into that, so you're not generating and recording your own music and hitting the record button. So it's a file import function, and you're bringing in
And then you have the layer, and then you cut it for the beginning,
Right.
just like movie.
And then you can, there's the enveloping effects where you can kind of like have it just, the music kind
Fade
of fade
in and fade
get a
out,
little louder,
okay.
and then fade back out.
All of those are like, little special techniques, not necessary. You don't
Right.
need the music, it just makes it a little bit more. Does your husband do music when he does his podcast?
No.
He just does his voice, begins, ends. Does he have any sort of like opening, like today's date or whatever?
He might. I've never watched one of his podcasts. No, but I do know that he uses the Promethean board, and then it also captures what he's writing. So he's got.
Gotcha. So he's doing like a video podcast.
Yeah, he is.
Right.
So
No.
that so they can watch, what he did, his examples and things like that.
So since you bring it up, let's talk about that for a second. Promethean and Smart, which I think are the two 500-pound gorillas in the interactive whiteboard game. What do you guys have at Fairfax?
Primarily Smart.
Smart. You use Smart at George Mason?
Yeah.
Smart and Frederick County. Yeah.
Smart. All right, and we have Promethean and Loudon, but both of them have screen capturing functions, just like your husband's doing, where you can record what's happening on the screen, and if you have a microphone plugged in, it's recording your voice as well. And so we have a teacher that does that at Loudon too, in a different high school in Loudon, where he records the screen, records his everything that's captured on the screen, and then any student can go back and watch it at any time. Originally, it was for a student with a disability. It was an accommodation. He had to provide video content of his lectures. And Chris, how am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? All right, let's show you. And so we're going to put it up on this website, and it's not just going to be for that one student. It's going to be for any student that wants to during their study halls or whatever. And now he does it all the time, right? He keeps up, and even though he doesn't have that student anymore, because it was a benefit to all the students. So.
Related question, you might want to come back to that. I would like to know about the best ways for capturing audios. Because again, at the university where we have a lot of tools, I don't think those are the same tools that teachers have. So if you're in this lecture, you're doing a lecture in a high school classroom, what's the best way to get your audio and not, be...
It depends. This is what I would say. It depends. So, of course, if you had some sort of mobile mic that was attached to whatever your device was, that's one way you could do it, like a Bluetooth microphone that goes to your...
Do they have those that are decently priced?
Well, I haven't ever used one, because
Okay.
here's what I do. Here I have a little lapel mic that we have at every school.
Okay.
I took one, and I plug it into my laptop, and it gets me good enough quality sound that I don't have to, right? You listen to the A.T.TIPSCAST, if you listen, it's been recorded with this mic and some of these live ones, and maybe the quality's not as great, but it's not so bad it's unlistenable. You know what I mean? Like, I can't stand listening to it. So, the other thing you can do is your smartphone. So I'm recording this right now with the voice memo app, and so 15 minutes of recording. It came with the iOS. I didn't go and get any other special app to download. Oh, there are other voice recording apps. So I just turn that on and record, and then I can take this and I will stick it to iTunes, and it'll be in my voice memo section, and then I can pull that. Use that as well. This might even be simpler for some teachers if they have their own device, or if like you saw during the morning session, if you have an iPad or something that's a classroom iPad or a school-based iPad that you can bring out and you can record. The other way is that many schools, they don't have a digital voice recorder. That's another way, but just the camera. So a little digital camera, and you can just turn that on. A lot of those have voice memo features where you're not even recording the video, just the audio. But I've done that too, where I've taken the camera and I say, okay, Jeff, do me a little bumper on the A.T.TIPSCAST. And so Jeff would say, hi, my name's Jeff.
Sisk.
And it's going to be on. You want me to edit that out?
Oh, no.
I'm Jeff Sisk, and I've got that whole video, and maybe I'll put the video up on YouTube, but I'll just take the audio to put into the A.T.TIPSCAST. I'll take the audio out, split the video from the audio. So lots of different ways to do it. For what I recommend for teachers, though, like in Loudon, is just to use the lapel mic, because they have it accessible in their lab. They can go and plug it into any computer, turn on Audacity, which is also on any computer, and boom, they're going. There's some questions there about students. If a student were to say, hi, Megan, and I called on you, and now you gave an answer, and it was wrong, or there was some chuckles or something, and that goes out as a podcast. So And that's if you're putting it out to the world, or if you're just giving it out to students to listen to, or just sectioning out. There's those sorts of questions that still need to be answered. I don't have good answers for them.
Right.
But that's technically how I would do it. Any other thoughts? How do you guys do it in Fairfax?
I don't think that we're recording. I don't see, at least in our arena, because we're primarily working in the special ed arena,
right,
where it's recording classrooms and lectures and that kind of thing per se, or what's happening in classroom. I think it's kind of like more what Megan described. It's more student-based stuff, and I see it as like kind of a project, as a different type of activity or assessment to do with kids. So the microphones and setups for that kind of thing are usually individualized for that particular activity.
Exactly.
And it's usually not a problem, because kids are really in front of the computer. You're able to walk up to it.
That's what I was thinking and that's how we primarily use it too in Loudon, is with for students doing their own individual recording at a computer station. And I was thinking about Camilla's presentation earlier, and just so people who are listening, weeks from now on who record this, to summarize that, they had iPads and they were making their own iBooks, right? And then Camilla was saying how they would load that up to a website, and then parents could download those iBooks and they could be reading it at home. And here I'm thinking, as a parent, that'd be great, but I have to read that book, you know what I mean? Which, okay, it's my own kid's book. I'll read that book, I take the time to read it. But still, it takes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes? I don't know. It takes time that I don't really have. And like I said in the last presentation, is that I think one of the benefits of podcasting is that you could listen to it. So, yes, I could look at the book, look at the pictures real quickly, and then I could listen, if they had take that same activity, and the next thing is, okay, you've typed it down, now tell me the story, and you record it so it's in an audio format. Now, the parent could be listening to it on the drive home, and it gives them another option. Yeah, okay, I looked at your book, it looks great. Great pictures. And I do listen to it because I had time to listen to it on the drive home. Do you know what I mean?
I think, that's one of the beauties of your A.T.TIPSCAST, is that, we have so much information out there that you can go and you can look on the internet and look at a little video on how to do stuff. But just listening, like I listened at the airport once, and I listened to 15 episodes, and I learned about word talk and just all these other things that I could then go back and research. But it just took me a few minutes to kind of go through them and just listen to them.
Exactly, it's an awareness level.
Yeah.
It's not always, in the A.T.TIPScast, I try and do some integration as well, but it's at a bare minimum, it's a awareness level. So, okay, now I know about this tool, I can go back and learn more about it. It frees you, I think, by hearing, by listening to it. But I have heard, and let me ask you if you've heard the same, some people, when I've talked to them about the A.T.TIPScast, they'll say, yeah, but I'm just not an auditory learner. Right? Have you ever heard that when you do the podcasting? And so what I say to them, I don't say to them, I think this in my head, is I think, all right, close your eyes. Go ahead, close your eyes. Go ahead, I'm not going to do anything nasty, I promise. So now I'm going to say, my first dog, his name was Dusty. Now open your eyes. Did I touch you at all? No. And did you see my lips moving? No. But what's the name of my first dog? So did you learn something auditorily? Absolutely, right? So it's not like I'm not an auditory learner, it's just you prefer to learn visually, or you prefer to learn a different way. And it's that framing, this is just my own little soapbox here, so it's just framing it in a different way. It's almost like that same concept, the person first language, right? I'm not a auditory learner. I'm a person who learns best through auditory means, or I'm a person who learns best through visual means. Because as soon as you get pigeonholed into, well, I'm not an auditory learner, so I'm not going to listen to podcasts, you've just completely limited yourself into a world of opportunity, right? And I think I run into that more frequently than I don't, when I start talking to people about podcasting.
Well, going back to the student project realm of podcasting, where do those podcasts go, and for what purpose are the students doing it? Are they then going to go back and listen to it again to share information? How is it then managed? Or is it just a way for the teacher to evaluate if they understood content? What's the use of it, I guess, and what do you see?
Are you asking me, or just asking the group?
Just throwing it out there. Yeah.
What do you think?
I kind of agree with Megan. When I've seen several examples of podcasts that are kind of regularly integrated in a class throughout the year, and so there's always an expectation, in those different environments, that those are going to be listened to either by somebody outside of that classroom or somebody, or the kids themselves within the classroom, that they have to go back.
There's like a purpose for it. Like
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like it's ongoing. It's a part of it. So that's when I see it like take off.
Yeah.
If it's, and it's kind of what you're describing with your husband.
Yeah.
It's like a regularly expected piece of their curriculum. Then it's going to fly.
Gotcha. So that is when the students are, well, not just students, it's when either a teacher is producing their own podcast from the content or when a student is producing
Right.
content. Right. Because the other side of that is teachers using existing podcasts to supplement or complement a lesson. Going out and finding this audio story, and we're going to listen to this audio story, and using it in a lesson where you're using podcasting, but you're not generating a podcast.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I see what you're saying. If there's some sort of purpose at the end. Well, what if it was just this purpose? What if it was just students recording their voice? I guess it wouldn't have to be a podcast in that case. It would just be students recording. Okay. Information. Here's my writing assignment, or here's my reading fluency. Right? I'm going to just record my voice for reading purposes of reading fluency. And then a month later, you go back and you listen to that first one, or 3 months later, listen to yourself now, and listen to yourself 3 months ago, and look at that improvement. Do you hear the improvement that you've made? And that could be a huge motivator for students, or at least not motivator, but motivator as well as a just self-worth, self-confidence. Look at how much improvement I've made. I know. I know I do that myself when I go back and listen to the first few episodes of the A.T.TIPSCAST. I was like, what was I thinking,
But I do think that's true, because I think I think sometimes teachers might get caught up in the definition of a podcast and then, turning what they're doing into a real podcast. But there's so many tools with just recording. I mean, there's so many reasons to be able to do that. And you have the tools there.
Right, so you're just recording your voice. You don't have to deal with the whole RSS, putting it out to the rest of the world.
I think maybe I get caught up in that.
Yeah, like doing to make a listening center for your students or something.
Right,
really
where does it go and what does it mean?
Am I putting it up in iTunes? How do you get it to the iTunes store? And suddenly these barriers, they're not even barriers yet. You don't have to do all that for it to be useful in the classroom.
Right.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be an authentic podcast, but it can definitely be useful.
Absolutely.
Simple ways to capture audio.
Yeah.
Right.
My daughter's in 4th grade. She'd love to record herself. She loves to share. They would do their own and just play each other's, like a listening center. They'd be happy.
Yeah.
I would also say, along those lines, is that saving the audio file to a thumb drive or burning it to a disk and then bringing it to grandma, you know what I mean? Or, here, listen to this, grandma, listen to what I did. It's the same. It's different as bringing the piece of paper. Here's the story that I wrote, grandma.
Right.
Oh, look how great that is. Well, now let's listen to the story I wrote, and you're hearing that student's voice. It's just a different modality,
The kids are really into them. My son is 4, and he did soccer videos. Did my cousin see the soccer videos? Did grandma see the soccer videos? Like, he knows. They go on Facebook. They go out. They're really accustomed to that.
Yeah, they are motivated by it.
I wanted to send a quick thanks to Amanda Peters from Atomic Learning for sending in that bumper at the beginning of this episode, letting everyone know about the Accessible Instruction Pledge. I think it's a noble idea, and if you can, please take a moment to head over to atomiclearning.com/pledge and take the pledge yourself. Until next time, may all your interventions be inclusive, and may all your strategies be supportive.